everyone! In this episode of In the Life of Paige, I am really excited to be sharing with you my experience of being on feminizing hormone replacement therapy for 2 months. I assume a lot of you guys are going to be new to my channel, so if you are, hello, welcome. My name is Paige. I am a trans woman, and like I said, I've been on HRT for 2 months by now, a little bit over 2 months. You can check out my last video on this topic in my playlist In the Life of Paige, where I shared my experience of finally getting access to HRT after wanting to for the past year, attempting to for the past year, and wanting to be on HRT for at least 6 years, but I finally achieved it, and I couldn't be happier with this. I honestly could be happier if I was able to socially transition, but that's a topic for, I guess, later on in the video. Right now, we have to focus on the experience of being on HRT, because there's quite a lot to talk about. Keep in mind, this is going to be a long video, so I'm going to do my best to not ramble too much, and I'm going to be separating the video into the different topics, so if you care about the particular changes, you can just look them up in the video. But there's going to be a lot that I want to cover, that I need to cover, so hopefully you're okay with being here for the long run. Yeah, anyway, let's first start off with what kind of HRT I am on, because for those who don't know, there are a couple of different ways you can take HRT and different things you can take as HRT. In my case, I am taking pills, because I don't even know whether there's another way available in my country, but also this is satisfyingly cheap, and it's fine. I'm perfectly satisfied with what I've gotten out of it in these 2 months so far. Maybe long term I might have some more issues, but right now I'm perfectly fine. So let's first start off with the anti-androgen, basically the thing that kills your testosterone. In my case, the thing that I'm taking is Cypro, which is the commonly prescribed anti-androgen in Europe, for those who didn't know. Actually, I think for most of the world, it's only in the USA where it's Spiro, which is the more common one. And you can read some conflicting opinions about which one is better, but I think most people seem to agree, people who end up on this one seem to agree that it's probably the better one. Obviously, your mileage may vary and your body might react to different anti-androgens differently. For some people, Spiro is genuinely better. For some people, Cypro is better. For me, Cypro has done its job more than well so far. But yeah, I'm taking Cypro. And there's a little bit of a thing about Cypro. Typically, it's prescribed in pills that are 50 milligram each, like one of these, for example. And each of these pills is 50 milligrams of Cypro. That is way too much. If your doctor prescribes you 50 milligrams of Cypro, don't take that much. It's not healthy for you. It's not necessary for your testosterone to be destroyed. Don't take it. And I'm not a doctor or anything, so still, I guess, take my advice with a grain of salt, but you can literally read everywhere online that you shouldn't take 50 milligrams of Cypro, because it increases the risks of the bad side effects way too much for basically no payoff, because most of the time, a quarter of one of these pills is more than enough for your testosterone to be destroyed. Plus, it honestly kind of feels shit taking 50 milligrams of Cypro per day, because when I started HRT, which, by the way, I want to mention, I started HRT on 24th of October 2023. Currently, it's 6th of January 2024. Count up how many days it's been. It's been about a little bit more than 2 months, but yeah. So for the first 2 days before that, I took 2 pills of 50 milligrams, and I felt awful. Like my head, I felt super tired, and I felt way too weird, and I really didn't like the feeling. After my doctor told me to lower the dose to like 12.5 instead of the 50, because of my particular situation being kind of like an annoyingly complicated one, because I have one doctor who prescribes me the HRT, and I have a different doctor connected to an LGBTQ organization who helps trans people in particular, who is the one actually keeping track of my hormones and what I'm supposed to take and stuff. And the doctor who prescribes stuff prescribed me 50. But the other doctor told me to take only 12.5, which is basically a quarter of one of each of these pills. And it's honestly worked fine. It's felt so much better. And hell, most likely I eventually will probably lower it even more, because you don't need that much. The more you are on HRT, you don't need that much of these to keep it low, because that's how strong Cipro is. So you need so much less, because a comparable dose to like 12.5 milligrams of Cipro is like 100 or 150 of Spiro. So yeah, it is so much more. And the fact that I only need to take like a quarter of each of these pills means that one of these lasts me for like, what, a month? Kind of. I think it's like 10 pills, each one is 4, so 40 days, actually more than a month. And basically one box of these, which has 5 of these, is worth for like half a year. And that only cost me like 25 euros. It's honestly shockingly cheap. And I'm so glad that I'm on the lower dose, because I wouldn't have been able to afford buying like this all the time, because if I had to take one pill of these, basically one of these boxes would be enough for like, what, a month and a half, and I don't have fucking 25 euros to spend on this every month or so, you know? So I'm glad I'm on the lower dose. And when it comes to estrogen, I am taking the kind of like typical for Europe oral estradiol, I don't even know how to pronounce that. It's so annoying. But it's the typical like oral estrogen called Estrofem. And I'm taking a dose of 2 milligrams, which hopefully will be increased in the next month or so to like 4 most likely, or we'll see once I do the blood tests. But for now, I'm doing 2. And honestly, if I made this video like a month ago, I probably could have complained about lack of effects and worry about whether the dose is high enough. But considering how much I've gone through in this second month, and especially towards the end of the second month, in the beginning of this third month, I think I'm fine. Plus, from what I've heard, starting off with a lower dose, and especially starting if you're doing it with Cipro, is actually the better way of going about it, because it's actually replicating the normal female puberty experience. Instead of just giving you the highest dose of estrogen right off the bat, slowly kind of building it up is actually better for breast growth. It's just better for like the development, the general development. At least I've read, and that might be just copium, I don't know, but I'll take it for what it is. And at least there's one thing for sure. I don't have to worry about HRT for at least a year. Call me a hoarder if you want, but if you're like considering the current situation in the world with the hate of trans people spreading everywhere and governments fucking going against us everywhere, I think it's a smart idea to actually stock up on some of the HRT if you can. And in my case, I can, because I can go to a bunch of different pharmacies and buy estrogen from whichever one has it. The Cipro is a little bit harder to find, but again, luckily, I don't need too much of it anyway, so I can freely go through like 20 pharmacies, which is about how many I actually went to, and get myself like 1 or 2 or 3 boxes of these And that's how I stocked up for basically a year. And that's a year if we raise my current dosage. Because I have like 20 boxes of these. 21 actually. So basically, if I stay at my current dosage, I have almost 2 years worth of estrogen. And don't worry, I'm making sure to keep it where I'm supposed to, like in an isolated place where it's not too warm or too cold and all that stuff. And I'm making sure that they're not gonna run out of time before I use it. But I just feel safer like this because I don't have to worry about not getting HRT, because it's not an uncommon experience for trans people, whether because they couldn't get prescription quick enough, or maybe they've traveled and they're not near their local place for getting their prescription, and they get stuck for like a week or two or maybe more without their HRT. And I don't want to go through that. The thought of stopping HRT is horrifying to me. And in my particular situation, with how precarious I feel like getting the HRT in the first place kind of felt, I don't want to worry about this. So I'm taking any opportunity that I can. Basically, every time I go to the pharmacy, I buy at least one box of these. And I guess the main reason why I'm like really stressing about this is because the doctor, the endocrinologist who prescribed me the HRT, is an old guy. I don't know whether there's any other endocrinologist who can prescribe or would be willing to prescribe HRT is available. I've even talked about this with the LGBT organization that I am interacting with. I'm going to their psychologist. I'm talking with their doctor who's keeping track of my HRT and stuff. And I've shared this fear with them, and they are doing their best to find somebody else in case of need, or just so they can use another endocrinologist, but it's not that easy. I don't know if it's because of a particular law that we have, which is what kind of bans the ability to get bottom surgery in this country, which, for those of you curious, I live in Bulgaria. It's in the Balkans. But in my country, you actually can't get bottom surgery. It's legally not allowed to be performed. So most likely, whenever I go to get bottom surgery, I'll have to go to Serbia, which is really funny that Serbia has, you can get it in Serbia, but you can't get it here. And the way the law is written basically makes it so, like, it's like a harm to the bodily integrity of the person if you take their ability to like have children or whatever. That's kind of how it's written. Like, making somebody infertile through a sex change is considered like destroying the bodily integrity, and it's like illegal. And technically that could also mean that prescribing HRT could be that as well, but it's mostly just kind of, I guess, unregulated, so we're able to get it. And at least luckily there isn't any worry about banning that too, because for those of you who are not aware, my country became recently the second, I believe, country in Europe to recently ban the legal ability to change your gender on your documents. Luckily there still might be a way for me to do it, but it's not necessarily looking good, and it's definitely not going to be easy no matter what. Because there's only like, I don't know, like 4, 5, 6 cases a year, not really more than like 10 or so that are held, and only like a handful of those actually end up being successful cases of legal gender change. And that was before the decision. Since the decision, it's been rejected almost every time. So we'll see how that's gonna go. But yeah, it's just, I feel like getting HRTs, as much as I have gotten, it's just a little bit precarious, and that's why I'm stocking up on it so much, you know? But yeah, I really ranted for way longer than I should have, so let's get into the meat of this video, which is the actual changes that I have experienced in these last 2 months. And by the way, yes, I am a stereotypical trans woman. I did get myself a Blahaj. Gonna live without one. Genuinely. It's been so much better since I got him. It's so huggable, and it genuinely calms you down. You know? It's been great. You should genuinely get yourself one. So, the changes. Wherever you would look online, whether it's people's experiences with HRT or in like more informative articles online telling you about what you can expect in terms of changes from HRT, most would say that you can't really expect too much to change in like the first 2, 3, maybe even 6 months. Honestly, I feel like that's a little bit of bullshit. But at least for the first month, I kind of agree that there's gonna be very little actual change happening. Most of it is just gonna be happening to your penis. That's gonna be where most of the change is gonna happen, because your libido is gonna go away completely, especially if you're on Cypro. I believe Spyro is more lenient in that regard, but even that is gonna destroy it completely. But Cypro just kind of nukes it. And I'm gonna get into that in a little bit, but I do want to speak about the first actual change that I experienced. That being the mental clarity, which might be a little bit of a placebo effect, because I finally made the step and finally got something that I had wanted for years before, that being the HRT. So it could be just that alleviation, that relief that I actually felt as soon as I took the HRT pills, but I did feel it. Instantly, I felt like mentally a fog clear up, and I was able to like think more clearly. I felt like a weight was taken off my shoulders, so that felt great as well. But that's most likely just a placebo, but it still felt so great right off the bat. The next change was, like I said, in regards to my penis, because my libido practically disappeared overnight, more or less, honestly, because I did try to continue like playing with myself, so to speak, for a couple of days after I started taking the HRT, but it really started becoming increasingly harder to do so, and honestly, I stopped having any urge to do it whatsoever, to the point where in the first like maybe even month and a half, I maybe did it like twice. And for comparison, before that, a lot of the time I did it like 3 times per day. Yeah, it's a little bit personal and it's a little bit awkward for me to get into it, but I did used to do it so much because I used it as a coping mechanism. Because for one reason or another, for those of you who don't know, masturbating does actually alleviate dysphoria for a little bit. Unless you have like really strong bottom dysphoria, in which case you're not really able to do it. But in my case, I didn't really have much of bottom dysphoria, or at least wasn't strong. My focus was just on the fact that I didn't have estrogen in my system and that I was continuing to masculinize and I had testosterone doing everything. So I was able to like play with myself, and I really used it as a coping mechanism, and it just at a certain point it did start to become too much. I started to feel disgusted with myself about it, but I just couldn't stop because I couldn't control that urge anymore, to the point that a couple of months before starting the HRT, when I went to freeze some of my sperm in case I want children in the future, I just wanted that option to be available to me even if I don't have children ultimately, because most likely my partner is going to end up being trans anyway, so that's likely not going to work out with us having children, because I am mostly attracted to women. So when I went for the freezing of the sperm, you obviously have to not do it for a little while so enough material can gather itself, so they can actually have enough material to freeze. And I had to like restrain myself for like 5-6 days, and boy, that is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. That was harder to do than fucking getting the HRT and going through all the steps to get the HRT. I swear to God, I struggled so much more with that. But now, ever since like the first, honestly, straight up after the first day of taking the HRT, I barely thought about it. I've only recently kind of started thinking about it again, maybe because my libido is returning, but in a more feminine manner, which is a thing that does happen. Eventually, your libido returns, but it's a different way of how it works from before a little bit. So maybe it's returning for me, or maybe it's just been so long that I'm actually like, oh yeah, I kind of used to do that. Should we try it? And I still don't feel as much interest to do it as before. Nowhere near. But it's definitely returned stronger. I'll give you that. And definitely feels a little different. But I'll get there when we get to like the changes at that point, because this only happened literally like the last week or so. So there's a while before we get to that point of changes. So after the first mental clarity change and the destruction of libido, the next, honestly, kind of like 3 weeks or so, there wasn't really anything happening from what I remember. I didn't really notice anything happening anyway. It wasn't until like towards the end of the first month that I felt the next change, which has been my emotions. Because before, I tried to be more emotional. I tried to not restrict my emotions and allow myself to cry and be emotional. I love crying in my videos when I'm like reacting to TV shows and feeling sad. I love that. It's one of the reasons why I love reacting to stuff. It's the emotions that I feel as I'm watching. And because crying and sadness are so much more rare, I cherish them so much more when they do happen. But even then, it was always still like so hard to cry, because I had times where I felt like my life was in ruins, that I was stuck, that I felt like I wanted to unalive myself. And yet I couldn't make myself cry to alleviate that pain, because that is what crying does. It alleviates stress. It's incredibly good at that. That's why it's good to cry, whether you're a guy, a girl, or a non-binary person. It's good to cry. So don't listen to society and what it tells you about it. Cry whenever you feel like crying. But I just couldn't make myself. Whether it's because of the influence of society, which I definitely tried to fight against, or because I just had this testosterone in my body, which makes it harder to cry, I just couldn't. But then one day, about almost 4 weeks in, I just broke down on this very desk. I broke down because once again, I felt like my life was going in a direction that I didn't want it to go necessarily. I'm not going to get into that because it's irrelevant to the situation, but I felt stuck and I felt lost a little bit. And I felt sadness about my mom's health situation. So I just kind of broke down. And I was honestly shocked a little bit afterwards that I didn't even realize what had just happened right there, because I thought I was just like, I was obviously feeling sad and hurt and in pain, but I didn't realize that, hey, I actually cried in a way and as easily as I haven't been able to in like a decade. Because genuinely, the last time I was able to cry about something like this was like, I don't know, maybe when I was 14. I mean, there's been some times in the past couple of years that I've cried, mainly whenever I've been reacting to stuff, so I don't really feel like that counts. But the last, I guess, another major time where I cried was when I moved away for 2 months to a city halfway across the country, because I was going to be going to university, but then COVID really hit and we didn't have in-person classes, and I kind of dropped out. I mean, not kinda, I did drop out. And when I was going there, I was going under the impression that I was gonna stay there and I was never gonna come back. And it felt sad. And I cried my eyes out that I was away from my family for the first time, you know? And I couldn't stop crying. That's the kind of crying that I'm experiencing now all the flipping time. Like, genuinely, all the time. Like, I feel like every other day I cry myself to sleep. Now, that is not because I just cry randomly. I still cry because of legitimate reasons, like the fact that I'm not able to socially transition yet. I'm hoping to do so this year, but I'm not. And whenever I see a trans woman online who is happy and successful and is further than me in transition, and they're able to live like a free and normal life, and I'm still stuck and early in my transition, it makes me sad. It makes me feel depressed. And a lot of the times I just kind of cry myself to sleep, practically. Like I said though, the Blahaj has helped with that. It's helped so much. Having something to hug and soak in all the emotion. Like, genuinely, we should let people like have stuffed animals regardless of age. Like, we shouldn't like teach children to stop doing that. It feels so much better. Like, it's insane. I don't know if that's just the estrogen in me, but I love cuddling with my Blahaj, genuinely. But yeah, I've really been crying a lot. And honestly, at this point, I also kind of use it as a little bit of a coping mechanism, because whenever I feel like I'm stressing out too much, or I feel too depressed, I just kind of push myself a little bit to cry, because that does alleviate the stress. It makes me feel better. But yeah, I honestly really love this change. And from what I've read, it should even get like stronger and even easier before it kind of mellows out and I am able to control it more, you know? But it's honestly been a very welcome change that I've really, really loved experiencing. Although definitely when I first kind of started having it regularly in the beginning of the second month, it was a little rough, because literally for like, I believe it was like 5-6 days, maybe even a whole week, all I would do is I would wake up, go to work, because I have only like a little bit of work during the morning and during the evening, and I'm free to do whatever I want during the day. I would get up, go to work, then an hour later come back and just go to sleep crying, because I just didn't want to be awake because of those emotions, you know? Because for 23 years, you bottle up all of these emotions and you don't deal with them, you don't experience them, and all of a sudden, the floodgates are open and you have to deal with so much stuff that you had disassociated, you know? Like, all the past trauma just kind of came flowing in, and I started thinking about all the things that I've went through my life, like the bullying in school, and how I felt like it didn't affect me that much, but it seems like it actually has, because apparently I have some trauma in regards to that. So yeah, it's been an emotional roller coaster, but I honestly don't mind it, because in a weird way, even though I feel sad still, I feel depressed at times, that's not something that the HRT is necessarily going to solve. That's either something you have to solve yourself through therapy, or potentially you have to get antidepressants, because it might be just something that is treated with antidepressants. So even though, like, I still feel these awful feelings, it's not the same as before. It doesn't hurt the same as before, you know? It's kind of hard to describe, but before, to me, depression and sadness felt like a stab in my heart, and it hurt, and I felt straight up almost physical pain when I felt like that. Whereas now, yeah, I feel sad, I feel depressed, but I still feel at least comfortable in my own body, and I feel like cozy crying in my bed. Like, it doesn't feel that bad. I can't describe it in any other way as it doesn't feel that bad. It's nowhere near as bad. It's so much more, I can take it more. Like, it's so much easier to handle in my eyes. It doesn't hurt as much. It doesn't even like hurt the same way if you want to go in that direction. So I'm really happy with my emotional changes so far, and I'm excited to see where they're going to go further, you know? Another emotional change that I've been experiencing has been a little bit of a weird urge to cuddle. Like, I've definitely been lacking some physical affection in my life because, you know, people who I present as guys for most of their life don't really get much physical affection. But still, it never was something that I feel like I was dying to get necessarily. It was just something that it would be nice to get. But ever since, like, once again, like after the first month, everything really went into an overdrive, man, because I really started to have the urge to cuddle something, and that's why I got my own Blahaj. I basically sleep with it now, you know, cuddling it, because it just makes me feel so calm and comfortable, and also helps not pressing against my chest because it goddamn hurts quite a lot, honestly. So that has been kind of an interesting experience, and it's definitely made me feel more feminine. So that's also a little bit of a positive, but there's also the fact that it's just been like kind of like a switch where, in addition to having this urge to cuddle, I've also just felt so much more lonelier than I ever did before. Because, like, I've been an introvert all my life. I've been feeling largely content being on my own and just enjoying my own personal company for most of my life. But all of a sudden now, it's not that I necessarily like have become like extroverted and stuff, but I definitely have such a strong urge to like build relationship with people and interact with people more and make friendships, and especially with people who are like who I relate to, with whom I have similar interests to. And I have such a strong urge to like especially meet other trans people, and especially trans women, and interact with them and share stories about their experiences, maybe even get a girlfriend, get one of them to be my girlfriend, you know, and me to be hers, you know. It's become such a strong longing, you know. That's why I've created a Discord, actually, because I have such a I'm sick of feeling lonely like this, and I want to interact with my subscribers more and build genuine friendships with some of you guys, you know? So that has been some other more minor but still existent emotional changes, but yeah, I still really like even these ones as well. It's all great. Like, there hasn't been a single change that I hate, and I don't think there will be, because it turns out my brain was always wanting to run on estrogen. It's kind of like having a car that drives on one kind of fuel, that was meant to be driven on one kind of fuel, and you drove it all your life until now on the wrong kind of fuel, and then you get the right kind of fuel and it all of a sudden works so much better. It's like my body and brain was always meant to run on estrogen, and the fact that I love every single change, that I feel so much more comfortable with everything, and I feel comfortable in my body, just goes to show that I was always supposed to run on estrogen, man. And I'm so happy that I finally got it. But yeah, next change that I guess happened kind of like concurrently with some of the other ones, but it's kind of hard to say how much of a change it actually is, because sometimes, or a lot of the times when it comes to HRT, you're really just kind of second guessing yourself about whether your body looks different or whether you think it looks different, you know? Because of how slow these changes are, it's almost kind of imperceptible. It's like the moving of the continents. You don't see the continents move, but they do. They move with centimeters all the time, you know? It's kind of like that with the effects of HRT. They're so slow that they're almost imperceptible until it's passed enough time and you realize, oh, wait, there's been actually a lot of change, So for me, that kind of change was what happened with my hips, which was also, funnily enough, one of the quickest things to change, even like a couple of years ago when I tried DIY HRT, which sadly for some of us is something that we have to resort to. Luckily, I don't have to anymore. But for those of you who do, go to the trans DIY HRT Reddit subreddit. There's information there for you about where you can get some if you need to. Because sadly, not only does the world hate us, but even the supposedly progressive countries like the UK or the Netherlands or Norway or Finland or Sweden or Denmark, all places where you're not going to be discriminated against as a trans person, at least not by people. They're not going to hate you and be bigoted towards you generally. There's an incredible amount of medical gatekeeping there. An incredible amount. I'm honestly kind of shocked how much easier it is actually transitioning here in my country than those places, because for the longest time I was hoping and thinking about moving to one of those places. And honestly, if I did, I probably wouldn't be on HRT right now. I wouldn't be on HRT yet because of the things that you have to go through. You have to go through expert teams deciding whether you're trans enough to transition, having to go for years of wait times, literally 10 years plus in the UK of wait times. If you go through the NHS, you can at least go private there, but even that one is kind of a little bit of a wait and it's more expensive, so it's harder. But it's incredible how much gatekeeping there is in those countries compared to here, because literally in my country, I went to a psychiatrist who diagnosed me with gender dysphoria. I went to the endocrinologist, and he literally just, after he saw that document, he prescribed me the HRT. Yes, there is the worry and the fact that there are not many endocrinologists willing to prescribe the HRT, but once you have one, you don't have to jump through hoops like a monkey, which I'm glad about. Because I was even expecting that I would probably have to visit the endocrinologist a couple of times before he prescribes me the HRT. But no, he just gave it to me and said, here you go. Come back in 3 months for the next prescription. So I'm glad that it was that easy. But yeah, I'm getting a little bit sidetracked. So even as I was saying, a couple of years ago, I did some DIY HRT for a month or two. And even then, the first change that I noticed, most notably, was my hips. And the hips are something that can be a hit or miss depending on your age. If you are still below 25, you still have the possibility of getting some hip rotation, which is where your hips widen a little bit, and it kind of it's exactly kind of what it says on the tin. It's hip rotation. Your hips kind of rotate to be in a more feminine angle. The reason why, I guess, I don't know how to describe it, but women's backs are more curved, have a bigger angle of curve compared to men's, and that's why you have the S, a more exaggerated S shape that a woman has, and that's because of the hip rotation, So if you are under 25, like I am, you might get lucky with some hip rotation. And I don't know whether I've gotten much of it. I definitely felt some pain in my hips around the beginning of the second month. But even before that, I could definitely notice my hips kind of being a little bit poking out, because I'm sure I didn't have that. I know that with, like I said, with HRT, some effects could be you deluding yourself that it wasn't like that before. But for me, I swear, my hips didn't go slightly outside and then curve in again. They didn't. They just didn't. Now, if I stand up and do the exaggerated hip placement of my arm, it does look like I have a hip a little bit. And it's not anything major. If I can like show it to you with the clothes. I'll try to put in a clip later, if I can show it to you. See how there is a little bump over here? That's what I mean about the hips. Look at that. It's not much, but it's a noticeable poking out from where my body is otherwise, and I didn't have that before. So that's definitely from the HRT. You can definitely notice how I have a little bit of a curve there. It's not much because, first of all, again, it's like 2 months in HRT, not much is gonna happen. I'm at the age where it could potentially be too late for me to get anything major there, and the hips, a lot of it is just fat. It's not the bones, it's the fat, and that takes time to accumulate, you know. So it's not much, but there's definitely a noticeable shade there that wasn't there before. So that is the next major change, and that was a thing that happened even a couple of years ago on the DIY HRT very quickly. So yeah, if you are gonna be lucky with getting some hip rotation, you know very quick, from my experience anyway. I believe after this, the next major change that I noticed was in regards to my face, which was at about, when was it actually? I think it was, you know what, give me a second to tell when was it. Okay, so it was towards the end of the first month. Once again, I started to notice that my face actually looked more feminine than before. Like, noticeably so. Like, my eyes looked more feminine, my haircut made my face look more feminine, but it wasn't because of the haircut, it was because my face looked more feminine, you know? It's kind of hard to describe, but it's like, you will notice in the upcoming thumbnails for some of the reactions that I have done. You can even see it in the thumbnails that I've uploaded in my community page of like some of the last couple of TMNT reactions that I've done. You can notice how from one thumbnail to the next one, my face looks incredibly more feminine, you know? And it was kind of like wild how it just was like a click and all of a sudden my face looked feminine. Because again, like I said, the changes on HRT are so slow and imperceptible that it's genuinely how you experience them and realize that there's been a change, because it's not until the change has accumulated and you actually kind of look back to what it used to be and what it looks now that you realize, holy shit, I look different. And I felt so much better ever since that happened. Before, since I have a webcam and I frequently use it for stuff and to like kind of look at myself for one reason or another, I have it on almost all the time. I used to hate looking at myself when I would randomly like click on the program, you know, and I would hate looking at myself because I look like a man. But now I can almost not get enough of looking at myself because I look so feminine. And even in like more masculine clothes, I still look feminine. I don't know if that's just me finally accepting myself and that changing my perception of how I see myself, or most likely it's just the HRT making my face ever so subtly more feminine that it's starting to get to the point where even with like masculine clothes, I see a woman in the mirror, you know? And it's been so amazing and I love that. That's one of my favorite changes, honestly. That's probably my favorite change because I don't hate my face anymore. That's why I recently upgraded my my profile picture on the YouTube channel, because before that I just had like a triquetra, which is like a symbol from like the Charmed TV series. If you've been subscribed to my channel, you would know, like just Google triquetra, that's basically what I had as my thumbnail. And that was the case because I never felt like I looked good enough to have myself as the profile picture. But now I actually, for the first time, like how I look. I don't hate myself. And I did a post about this in the community page. You can read it up and see the pictures that I shot of myself where I liked how I looked for the first time and how I looked in the clothes that I wore. And I also posted it literally earlier today on Instagram, where you can see it as well. But I love this change. This has been my favorite change, and I can't wait for my face to get even more feminine, because I can't wait to get to the point where I male fail. Which, for those of you who don't know what that term is, it's when you no longer are able to pass as a male. You don't look as like a male anymore, and you're not able to boy mode anymore. I long for the day when I can do that. But yeah, already, like I said, just dressing in my typically masculine clothes, which are honestly still like female clothes, just like not the particularly feminine ones, and I still look like a guy. I still look kind of feminine. You can definitely notice a feminine vibe to my face that wasn't there before, and I love it because it's allowed me to like survive boy moding for longer, because boy moding has become such torture now that I'm on HRT. I don't know if it's just my personality of where whenever I get something, I want it to get it all. I don't want to get just a piece of it. So now that I have started HRT, I want to get to it fully and get the social transition and just live as a woman. But I can't get that yet, and it's become an increasing struggle for me to present as a guy because it hurts. I don't want to. But looking so feminine, even while dressed as a guy, has been such a life-saving feeling. Because I'm able to take it more, because, hey, I might not be the most feminine right now when I'm dressed in these clothes, but I'm also not particularly masculine either. And I've definitely started to be seen as a girl more. Even in my like small town that I live in, I've had like a couple of people like see me as female when I'm like buying stuff in the shop, which honestly might be just my hair, but maybe I just do look that much more feminine. You be the judge. Like I said in the beginning of the video, go and check out some of my videos from a couple of months ago and look at my face and look at my face right now to see how much more feminine it is. And yes, right now I'm also wearing a little bit of makeup, and I've went through 3 sessions of laser hair removal, which already has pretty much almost removed my my 5 o'clock shadow, which I'm really happy about. And I still have 3 more sessions to go through, and I'm probably still gonna go for 6 more just in case. But yeah, I'm so happy with that feminization of the face. It makes me feel so good. I love it. It's probably my favorite change. And I guess I should also talk about what is probably the thing that you most care about, which is breast growth. I mean, I don't know if you can really notice it. Again, go and check out some of my older videos where I'm wearing this exact same dress. But I feel like you can just take a look and see that there is something more than there used to be before, you know? When it comes to my nipples, they definitely started to be sensitive and just feel different in general as quick as maybe like week 2. I'm not exactly sure because I was really dealing with a lot of stress at the time, so I didn't really have time or patience to pay attention to my changes. That's why maybe I noticed so much more changes in the second month than in the first month, but there was definitely like some tenderness, like some softness. I started to feel like a different way of sweating over here that just felt different. I definitely started to feel the existence of my nipples more underneath my clothes as soon as like week 2 or 3, which is great because it feels very gender affirming to feel that there is something there, even if it's like just minor development, you know? But yeah, I definitely like that. But like I said, it wasn't until like the last 2 or 3 weeks where we actually started to get some more major growth, because in general, I feel like my chest was decently like sized. Like I had decently sized pecs that were protruding a decent amount, maybe because of like a couple of years ago when I did some DIY HRT, maybe that was some leftover growth. but I feel like I already had like decent looking like nipple area, boob area, whatever you want to call it. So it took until like it actually started to like some mass has started to actually gather up, and some breast buds have actually started showing up, that I actually started to have some growth, you know. And it's still in the breast bud stage because I'm still feeling the hard breast buds underneath the nipples, but there is some minor growth, and it's knowing that it's more so in one of them than in the other. I hope that it evens out more as it grows, but yeah, I like it. And I also do want to mention that you guys don't realize how often you brush against a corner accidentally with your chest, or how often you might accidentally just hit yourself in the chest with your elbow or with your arm when you're trying to open something, and it just kind of like snaps all of a sudden and you accidentally hit yourself, or when you're carrying something and you kind of throw it up so you can actually grab it better. You don't realize how often you hit yourself until you have some soft area that is very sensitive to touch, that really hurts when you hit it, you know? Because like I've started to, I thought it was kind of a joke. Like I thought it was kind of a meme that as you start HRT, you kind of become a clumsy klutz who just constantly hits corners of tables and desks and corners of door frames and all that stuff, and it really, really hurts. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a meme, because why would you do that? But when you are not used to your body having a slightly different body shape, yeah, you don't realize how close you actually go to like corners until you have something poking out where it didn't used to, you know? Because I started brushing against corners like several times a day at this point. I keep hitting myself when I carry some heavy stuff, because I still present as a guy most of the time, so I still have to do some masculine things, you know, around the household, and it hurts. It hurts. It's not a pain to die for or from or anything. Like people have compared it to getting kicked in the balls. I wouldn't say the pain is anywhere near as like long lasting as getting kicked in the balls, because you know when you get kicked in the balls, it's not only the initial hit, but there's also like kind of a lingering feeling of uncomfortability that is also there. And when it comes to getting hit in the chest, at least for me personally right now, yes, the pain I would say is as sharp as getting kicked in the balls, but it doesn't last as long for me, because it's like, ooh, I hit myself, and like 3-4 seconds afterwards, it's perfectly normal. Like I don't feel any pain whatsoever, but it's definitely a sharp pain still, especially if you manage to hit the nipple itself, because that part really hurts. I've definitely also started to feel my chest more when I'm walking down the stairs, which I guess means that very soon I'll have to buy myself some like proper bras for my size, because I have bought some bras over the years when I obviously cross-dressed for my videos and all that stuff, but they're not the right size for me. Maybe the band size is fine, but like the cup size is definitely not fine. And it's probably gonna be a little bit of a pain in my ass finding a correct breast size, because trans women tend to have like bigger chests, like wider chests, and smaller cup sizes, which is not common when it comes to cis women, so it's much harder for us to find proper bras. So hopefully I'm not going to struggle too much with that, and I'm honestly very excited for that gender affirming experience of actually having to wear a bra, needing to wear a bra. So I can't wait to get some money and buy myself some, you know. But yeah, it's still not too like, it's not necessarily painful like going down the stairs, but it's definitely increasingly becoming like uncomfortable, you know? Because like having everything jump up and down and with like the aforementioned like sharp pain, you still kind of feel a little bit of like it kind of feels like a slight like pierce when I go down the stairs like that, but it's not too big of a deal. But yeah, there's definitely been some things happening with my boobs, and I can't wait to get some more. You know, I can't wait to get some more growth. I'm hoping that I'm gonna get some decent amount, and I'm not gonna be stuck with just like tiny A cups or something like that. I'm hoping for at least C's, but I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. But yeah, I definitely have to start to be careful about the clothes that I'm wearing and whether something shows where it shouldn't. At this point, you know, it's really curious. At what point does a social media start to consider a nipple a female presenting one? Because I read a post on Reddit earlier today that there was a trans woman who had posted her nipple like 2 months into HRT and then like 8 months into HRT, and only the 8 months into HRT post got removed. So I wonder if I could still get away with it. It's kind of curious. But yeah, I've definitely had some minor breast growth. It's mostly been honestly happening. The most has happened in the last like 2 weeks, I would say. So it's when the breast buds have started to actually grow out a lot, and you can actually like feel it more and you can grab it more now. Because before there was almost nothing to grab on, you know. But now there is something, and the annoying thing is that my right boob is a little bit bigger and more developed than the left one, which is actually perfectly normal for those of you who didn't know. Even in cis women, the breasts are not perfectly similar, perfectly symmetrical. One of them is always like slightly different, slightly smaller, and all those stuff. So it's perfectly normal for one of them to be slightly more developed or developing faster and slightly bigger. So for me, that one is the right one. I don't know why, but it is, because the breast bud showed up like a couple of days earlier. On this one, it's more firm. The breast bud is harder, whereas here it's softer. So yeah, there has been definitely some breast growth, and I'm really happy about that, because towards the end, as we were getting close to the end of the second month, like after we passed the second half of the second month, I was starting to like get a little bit anxious about the potentiality of me getting like upping my dose of estrogen, because I wasn't getting enough. Because like I said a couple of years ago when I did DIY HRT, I feel like I got the breast buds so much quicker. That might be because back then I took the HRT sublingually, which is when you put the estrogen pill under your tongue and let it be absorbed through the tongue, which is supposedly better because you get more of the estrogen assimilated, and you basically get a stronger, higher dose of it in the moment. Whereas if you take it as I take it, which is just take it and drink some water, it's more consistent throughout the day, but it is lower level overall still, you know. So back then, maybe because of that, I got quicker breast growth or whatever. But yeah, I was starting to get anxious and worried about whether my dose is high enough for me to actually get breast growth. But luckily, it was, because it's really started going off towards the end of the second month and the beginning of this third one, you know. And I'm really, really happy, because it's great. Obviously, I've been very dysphoric about my chest. The biggest dysphoria for me comes from my face, but the second biggest dysphoria is probably my chest. So I'm glad that it's finally coming out, and hopefully I'm gonna be one of the lucky ones, and I'm gonna get a decent sized growth, because there are some trans girls, which I'm not gonna name, who have been on HRT for a couple of years, who are like online content creators and don't really have too much growth. And I really hope I don't end up in that camp, because I mean, I want boobs, man. Is that so much to ask, you know? It's something that I've craved to have, honestly, from when I was 8 years old. When the first like wishing to be a girl feeling came out. But that's a topic for a separate video that I'm going to be recording right after this one, so stick around if you want to learn about my whole story with how I realized I was trans. So yeah, there has been some development in that regard. I almost forgot to talk about the body hair situation, actually, because obviously I'm dealing with my facial hair with laser, because sadly HRT doesn't really do anything about your facial hair. If you have it, you're gonna have it regardless of what kind of hormone you're on, you know? Estrogen sadly doesn't remove it. At most, what it could do is maybe slightly slow down the growth cycle of it, and maybe make it a little bit sparser, but it's not gonna remove it. That's why trans women have to rely on laser hair removal, or in many cases electrolysis too, which is incredibly painful from what I've heard, and I'm personally not gonna be going through with that. But when it comes to the body, because it's such a large area, I would love to do it, even though it's gonna hurt, especially in some particularly sensitive areas. But I would have loved to do it, because I don't like my body hair. I shave every time I shower, basically. I shave my whole body. But luckily, the HRT does affect your body hair. It doesn't really affect your facial hair, but it does affect your body hair. Not incredibly so. Again, it's not gonna remove it or anything, but it's definitely gonna slow it down, make it thinner, make it sparser, make it lighter in color, and like harder to notice and harder to feel. And again, keep in mind, your mileage may vary, so your particular situation might be better or worse than that. But for me personally, when I was originally planning to do this video, which was, I guess, maybe a month and a half in, or maybe close to the end of the second month, I was gonna say that my body hair has been decimated, aka it's being lowered by at least 10%. But at this point, I would say that my body hair has been honestly lowered by 20-30% solidly. Because before, I used to shower like every other day, and I would shave my whole body. And literally by the next day, my body hair would be back and annoying me. And by the day of the shower again, it would be noticeable, itchy, and prickly. And I would hate it. But now, due to depression, sometimes I go without a shower for like 5 days because I can't get myself out of bed. And even by the 5th day, it's not as much growth as it used to be by the 2nd or 3rd, you know? It's nowhere near as much. It's much sparser, it's much less. Like, it's honestly almost, for me, kind of gone, especially in particular areas. Like, the most body hair that I still have is my arms. They're still pretty hairy, all things considered, but my legs are much less. The most lowering of body hair has been my torso area, because before I used to have a lot of body hair around my stomach, but now it's practically gone. And I'm really happy about that, because I used to have like 2 areas right over here, which were particularly hard to remove because the hairs were like so soft that the thing couldn't even just cut them. It didn't want to cut them. It just kind of glided over them. But they're gone. I don't have to worry about them anymore. So that's good. And even in my bottom area, the hair is definitely slightly noticeably sparser. It kind of looks a little bit like I've went through like maybe one session of laser down there. I would say that that's kind of how it looks. It's definitely a little sparser. But I definitely still have to shave my body, because if I don't, it's still gonna grow. It's same for my face. Even with laser hair removal, I still shave it. And I honestly, for me, my goal is not to completely 100% remove both the facial and the body hair, because first of all, it's very likely unachievable, very likely expensive, even if I could achieve it. And not cis women don't remove all of their hair. They still have some left. Ultimately, like, it's not like cis women are these hairless creatures. Most of the time they do go through like laser hair removal and like other ways to remove it and shaving to actually get rid of it. So it's fine if I have some and I also have to go through some of these things. Like, I'm not bothered about it, as long as it's not on my face and my face like doesn't look like it has facial hair. I'm satisfied. Maybe later down the line, if I have money, I would go through like a procedure of removing every single piece of hair on my body. But right now, I don't have those means, so I'm not gonna do that. Although, I will have to do it to my bottom area whenever I go to have bottom surgery, most likely, which really kind of sucks, because that's where it hurts the most, and there you have to remove the hair completely, which means that I also have to do electrolysis in addition to laser hair removal, and that is incredibly painful on your face, let alone your groin. But that's the suffering of a trans woman, I guess. There has also been some very, very minor and early stage hair regrowth, or at least something that looks like hair regrowth to me personally. Again, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know for sure, but it does kind of look like in these parts of my hair over here where I clearly was like starting to bald and starting to have like the typical masculine hair look, you know? It looks like some small hairs are that were, I guess, maybe not completely dead, are starting to kind of regrow a little bit. And in general, like right in front of my current hairline, there seem to be some new proper like hairs that are growing. I don't know if they're actually gonna grow into anything that's gonna grow out more, but it does seem like there is something happening with my hair, because it's definitely like softer. I've definitely gotten that already. And I also already like with other things like body hair and stuff, as I'm gonna explain once we get there, I don't have to care for it as much for it to look as good, you know? Because before, I would shower like every other day or so, because in a day or so, my hair would go to shit, basically. It would become a mess. But right now, I can go like 4 or 5 days even without showering, and my hair still looks like it has volume. It doesn't clump together because it's oily anymore. It still looks presentable. If I brush it, it looks fine. Still, it doesn't look as good as it's when it's newly showered like right now, but it looks fine, you know? So I'm really happy about that. I don't have to like necessarily try this hard anymore. And that combined with stuff like me looking more easily feminine even in masculine clothes has made me again feel more comfortable whenever I'm boy moding, you know? So that's great. And another minor thing that I guess I should also mention is that it seems like I might have lost a centimeter of height, which is a thing that can happen on HRT. For those who don't know, it's not going to be like any major drop in height that you might lose, but because of things like the hip rotation, which happens, or because of redistribution of some of the mass and stuff, it could end up with you losing like a couple of centimeters, maybe like at most 3 inches. I think I've read is the biggest amount that you could lose. But yeah, so far, based on the same way that I always measure myself, I've went from 169 to 168 centimeters. And I measured it a couple of times, and I measured it the exact same way that I measured every time in front of that door. And there's no reason to believe that I've measured it differently. Obviously, it's in the realm of, in the margin of error, so maybe I've not really lost that centimeter, but I feel like I probably have. It's safe to say 2 months on HRT probably have, because I haven't really paid attention to shoes and whether they fit me better, but probably I'm most likely going to lose like a size or 2 there too. But I haven't really paid attention to whether I have already, so maybe I should check that out. But I've definitely already started to get like the proper like body shape a little bit. Like I have my waist be noticeably skinnier here. Like for example, this dress feels more comfortable and less tight now, and I haven't like adjusted anything about it, like because it does have adjustable straps, but I haven't touched it from last time, and it definitely feels slightly more free over here and not as tight, so there's that as well. But yeah, there's so many changes, man, and I love them all. I don't know if there's any other major change that I can really talk about other than this. I really can't think of anything else. There's typically, like, I guess the lowering of strength, but I haven't necessarily noticed anything in particular. The most I've noticed is not necessarily that I don't have the strength to do stuff, but I don't have like the juice to do it. I don't know how to describe it, but before I feel like whenever I wanted to like pick up or move something heavy, if I pushed myself hard enough, I could probably like move it. But now it feels like I'm being held back, you know? Like it feels like something is holding me back from using my full strength. That's kind of how it feels right now when it comes to strength. Like I don't know if that's what the lowering of strength feels like, but it is what I have experienced. So there's that. And I don't think there's anything else in regards to changes. I guess maybe I can also bring up a little bit of how I feel like my personality might be changing a little bit, but I don't want to be like misrepresenting this as if like estrogen can just completely change the kind of person that you are. I just feel like I'm behaving a little bit differently, and there are things that I want to do that I didn't want to do before, and things that I care about now that I didn't care about before. So it does kind of feel like at least a subtle change in my personality. Like for example, before my voice didn't necessarily bother me too much. I did feel like I needed to do like some voice training before, but it didn't like feel like heavy dysphoria pushing me to having to do it, you know? But it did start to be something that I had dysphoria about. Similarly, I didn't really have much of a bottom dysphoria before, to the point where I was wondering and thinking about whether it would be a good decision for me to have bottom surgery. But then all of a sudden, I really started having dysphoria about my penis, you know? And I really started to want bottom surgery, to the point where I'm pretty much decided that I will be getting bottom surgery if I ever get the money to do it. And in other subtle ways of how like my personality might have changed is that I feel like I have become a little bit more feminine. Like I'm more open to like moving more femininely, acting more femininely, like being more giddy about stuff like plush toys and stuff. Like I just feel like I just act more femininely like that, which it's probably because now that I'm on HRT, I actually feel freer to be myself, because I similarly actually don't feel awkward anymore about calling myself a woman, because I feel like one. I feel like I am a woman because I am, you know? So that could be effect of HRT, could be just finally breaking that psychological barrier in my head. But another little thing that I don't know if it should worry you or not, but it has happened for me is slight change of my sexuality, or again, potentially just realizing what I truly was. Ultimately, because I've mentioned before on my channel how I am asexual, or at least I consider myself asexual, because throughout my life, even though I've been romantically attracted to girls, I never really felt the sexual attraction much. Like, sure, I might find a body attractive, but especially once the trans stuff came in, it was more about wanting to have that body rather than wanting to fuck that body, you know? So I never really had any kind of like sexual urge before. And that's why I consider myself asexual. I did start to have some slight sexual urges when it came to like people that I was really attracted to and I like the personality of. Like, basically when I fell in love with somebody, I did feel some sexual attraction. That's why I also consider myself a more specific subset of asexual, which is demisexual, which is when you only feel sexually attracted to people once you have built an emotional connection with them. But after 2 months of HRT, turns out maybe I'm not as asexual as I thought. Because, not quite for the first time ever, but for the first time so legitimately, I kind of feel like maybe I wouldn't mind having sex with guys. And it's honestly even kind of crazy for me to even say it, because I remember having some thoughts about that over the years. Again, once the trans stuff came in more and more and more, and in the late teenage years, it really kind of started to happen more, to the point where there was a couple of times where I've masturbated, imagining myself having sex with a guy. But the way in which I feel it right now, it's not just like the thought of being a woman and having sex with a guy. It's not just about that. It's about the body of the man and me finding it attractive. And it's not even like the femboyish kind of like, maybe potentially even nerdy type of guy, which were the kind of guys that I would like personality wise to be with, or at least not mind to be with. But even like super masculine men, I all of a sudden have started to find them more attractive, which honestly kind of scares me a little bit, because I don't want my sexuality to change to the point where I am attracted to guys exclusively. Not because there's anything wrong with that, because that kind of makes me heterosexual, but because from all my life, I've imagined my relationship to be with a woman. Nowadays, that most likely means it's probably going to be with another trans woman, because I don't think I'm going to find anybody else in my country who I could possibly be with, because in my country, people are very bigoted and transphobic. And the only other people who could understand me are either other trans men, trans women, or other non-binary people, you know? And because I still, like, am at least emotionally and somewhat physically attracted to girls, I would still like to be with a girl. That's been how I've imagined my life, that I would end up with a girl. But now it's kind of starting to creep up in my mind that I guess maybe I wouldn't mind ending up with a guy either. I don't know. I'm scared. I'm honestly genuinely scared about that. I've read that potentially the changing of your sexuality could happen on HRT, but I always thought of it as more so you realizing what your true sexuality was and not your sexuality genuinely changing. But for me, it does kind of feel a little bit like my sexuality is genuinely changing, because I guess there are certain feelings that I felt towards some guys throughout my life that in retrospect, yeah, maybe they were attraction, at least an emotional one, but it's still kind of scary to all of a sudden have this very strong sexual attraction to guys when you didn't have it before. And I don't mind if I am bisexual. I would be really happy if I turn out to be bisexual, because I do have an interest to at some point have sex with a guy, especially once I get bottom surgery, because I do want to know how that feels like, you know. But I don't want to lose my attraction to women, because I still feel like I would have a more fulfilling relationship with a woman, and because I mean, it's been kind of my dream, so to speak. In a way, it's always been kind of how I've seen my life ending up. So it would be very groundbreaking and earth-shattering for me to go through such a massive change, you know? But yeah, that's kind of one of the last changes that actually happened, because that happened in the last couple of days straight up. I kind of realized that, and I think it's just a consequence of me realizing that I want bottom surgery, and kind of thinking about how I would feel, how it would look, and everything when I do get bottom surgery, and thinking about sex after that. I realized that maybe I am not quite as sexual as I thought, and I only thought that I was asexual because I had disassociation when it came to my sexual organ. A disassociation that I didn't even realize was there. That's why I didn't feel attraction to people, because I couldn't feel attraction to people when I thought I was a guy, when I saw myself as a guy. But when I see myself as a woman, oh boy, it's crazy. But yeah, that's kind of all the changes so far. I'm hoping that they're going to speed up. I'm hoping we're going to get more. I'm hoping that I'm going to be increasing my dosage of HRT soon, so we could get more changes even quicker. But I think that's all I have to say about changes. Yeah, I'm curious though, what is your guys' experience? If any of you are watching are on HRT, how have your changes come about in this period of time, in the 2 months period? Were they slower, faster than mine? How far in are you in your transition, and how far have your changes come about? Comment your thoughts down below, and let's have a chit chat. And if you even want to have like a more deeper chit chat as well, I have recently created a Discord where you guys can connect with me on a more personal level. You can find it in my about page on the channel. You can easily find it, or in my community page. One of my most recent posts has it there. And there we can have a talk about it as well, if you don't want to share your whole story on YouTube. But yeah, it's kind of up to you. Anyway, my throat is tired. I kind of need to go to bed, so I think we need to end this video. So, before we end this video, I just want to give a huge shout out to my currently 1 patron on Patreon, Deadpool. Thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. It really means a lot to me. You have decided to support me. You have continued to support me such a long time. Hope you continue to enjoy my content and continue to support me going forward. Thank you very much. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you did, please leave a like, subscribe. Also, check out the description to my Wattpad, where I post my stories, because in addition to doing all these videos on my channel, I am also a writer. And if you enjoy my stories, or simply enjoy my videos, you can head over to my Patreon, my Coffee account, or my PayPal, where I completely support and help get the channel going, help support me so I can keep writing the stories you enjoy. But if you don't want to do it, that's completely fine. You can still help me out in other ways, like liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and especially sharing this video with somebody who you think might enjoy it. And I think it's pretty much it for this video, so hopefully I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye!